Now I have to apologize a little bit because a lot of my videos feature lands that are in agricultural settings. And that's of course where I lived in Southwest Wisconsin right here. That's where I'm at right now. That's where I'm actually filming. But a lot of my roots come out of the UP of Michigan. I lived there for 14 years. I started hunting up there in my late teens and their late 80s. So yeah, I'm almost 50 right now. I'm 49. So, but a long time ago, I started hunting in the UP in a lot of the big woods, a lot of conifer settings like we're in right now. And that's where my roots are at. When I started public land down in lower Michigan, it was big woods, big tracts of public land in the Waterford area to Clarkston, Independence Oaks, down in there there's chunks of public land. That's what I had to hunt, and eventually I was blessed to be able to hunt ag land down in lower Michigan, thumb land, in the area of the thumb, and then over here in Southwest Wisconsin starting in 2002. Areas of Minnesota I've hunted, Indiana with ag land, agricultural land, and in Kentucky too. And so I have a lot of experience that hunting big woods in Pennsylvania. All that being said, again, it goes back to a lot of the concepts that I talk about work. It doesn't matter if it's in a big wood setting, a northern setting. There's differences of balance. And what I want to talk to you about real quickly today is that if you're in a northern setting and you're watching my videos and you're just saying, well, these concepts don't apply, they do apply. My first book out there, it's Whitetail Success by Design. I detail in the intro and conclusion, even though a lot of people look at that as a private land book, I talk about what deer do and how they relate to hunters and each other, and bucks related to does on a daily basis all year long. In the intro and conclusion actually details a hunt that I had on public land, trying to illustrate that deer are deer. Deer are deer no matter where you're at. The good thing about all of this is that if you're in a northern setting, if you're in a big wood setting, could be Kentucky, could be Pennsylvania, there's hope. There's a lot of hope. There's a difference in balance though. You know, I talk about food plots around here, you know, generally we're looking at 40 acres and having 2 to 3 acres of plots on that 40, and that's enough to bring the deer into January and February with quality planted plots at the right time of the year. Need a lot more food in northern settings, big wood settings, because there's a lot less quality food available. You'll find that deer feed as rhythmic patterned feeders 5 times a day. That means in ag land around here, they're back in their bedding areas, they're eating browse, they're eating acorns, and acorns are just like browse. Woody regeneration, shrub tips, briars, acorns, even chestnuts. You want that all back in the woods near their bedding areas because that's the daytime browse they require. Their afternoon feeding is their strongest feeding, they're heading to green. And then twice at night, they're out in the ag fields. So all you need to do to control the daily movement in an ag parcel is feed the deer twice in their browsing areas, and they're browsing in their bedding area with browse, with roughage, and then that afternoon food slot, and you don't care where they're at night on the neighbor's ag fields. So it makes it nice because you can feed a lot of deer with a small amount of food plot acreage, because they're only focusing on your food plots, maybe a little bit in the morning, but especially that afternoon time slot. So 1.5, sometimes 1, at the most 2 out of 5 times during the day. Up north, big woods, a lot different. You'll find, I find on my own property, I had up to 260 acres in the UP at one time. It started with 10 acres, then a 120, and then we bought more. Big story, putting it together. But I relied on 8 acres of food plots, 14 different plots, in the one portion of the property that fed about 160 acres, and then public land behind that. And what I found was those deer were on those plots 5 times a day. And when they're on your plots 5 times a day, they consume your plots very quickly. And so I had 1/3 of many deer up there and 2 more acres of plots that I had down here on 165 acres, and the deer just consumed it. If you're working on a northern property, if you're working on a big woods property, it all starts with food. If you're going out and making bedding areas, what are you making bedding areas for? The deer aren't there yet because you don't have food. So starting with food is important. I have a couple articles that I detailed in the past, going back to the early 2000s, mid 2000s, about, for one, how can you plant food plots on sandy soil? I had conservation forester up there, a couple of them biologists, tell me you're not going to get food plots to grow on this sandy soil. And then I had Jim Islip from Michigan State Extension Office, agricultural extension agent in Elder County. He was actually resided over the whole UP, the Upper Peninsula. But he told me you can grow, don't worry. And I was pretty bummed when they told me I couldn't grow food plots. But it started growing those food plots 99, 2000. By the time I got into 2005, 2006, I had 8 acres of plots, 14 different plots, 65 tons of lime, all 50-pound bags. My soil started in the high 4s to low 5 for pH. Very, very, I mean, we're talking parts per million in the 5, 10, 20 range. I mean, terrible soils, terrible fertility levels. But over time, I was able to improve those fertility levels, and that food began to develop a deer herd. Summer food rotations that all include clover. I'd cut those food plots in half or in 2/3, and I'd replant in the fall. I'd make sure that I always had that clover base, so the following summer I had clover. Once the deer herd in the area, we went from, I saw one spike, got one rub and scrape, and I think I had 5 pictures of them in '99, to 2006, and you can check out the articles that I've talked about. I think it's big rewards on small food or deer parcels. Another one is improving poor soils for food plots. But in 2006, I passed up 11 bucks, shot 2, and had 17 bucks on trail camera. So from '99 to 2006, the property changed just absolutely dramatically. And that was in an area where 50% of the fawns die every year with winter severity. I was in an area where there's only about 15 deer per square mile, maybe even 10, so very low deer numbers. I was able to attract yearling bucks by making sure that I had multiple food sources, multiple bedding areas. And it's backwards on a lot of parcels, but you always start parcels with food. That's what defines daily movement. That's what attracts the deer to the property. But once you have that food there, you're going to have to make space for deer. So once I attracted those deer to the land and attracted their daily patterns, then I'd work on some of those small, soft maple pockets just to get them down. You had to make sure the deer could freely move through them. No high hinge cuts. Lots of movement for them because there's predators in that area, but then you gave them the hardwood regeneration, did that with a little bit of aspen on the property, defined the movement once it came onto the property, and believe it or not, you can build a high quality deer parcel. I even received an award from the Quality Deer Management Association, their Al Brothers Deer Manager of the Year Award in 2004 for my work on that property, and I hadn't even shot a doe at that time. It was all about building that herd, which is still QDM. If you're not at capacity, bring it up. If you're above capacity, bring it down. Bottom line, huge improvement from '99 to 2006. And you can do it in northern setting. It starts with food. Then you work on the bedding areas for the deer that are attracted to the land. It doesn't matter if you have poor sandy soils. That's all I had. And I was still able to, you can't plant the glamour crops of beans and peas and corn. You're working more on clover possibly to build the herd, summer food plots if needed, but especially buckwheat and rye rotations. I learned that first planting about 100 pounds of rye 4 weeks before the first frost, and then adding 100 pounds of rye right over the top of it, and then 100 pounds more. If you look up layering rye for whitetails, then it's easy to see you can add that volume then by not just a single planting. You're filling space this way, horizontally, not vertically. And there's things that you can do on poor soils. You still can have food plots. Don't worry about it if you don't have beans or corn. That really doesn't matter at all. You're talking about adequacy, and that's what's taught me going into any land. It's about the timing of the food that you have, not necessarily the quality of the food. Food in the right location to move deer. In those northern settings or big wood settings, you're going to need more food, and you too can have a great whitetail parcel. I've seen it on my own lands. I've experienced it firsthand. I've seen it all around the country in poor soil areas. Doesn't matter if it's eastern Colorado, over to Maryland, Delaware, and Vermont. There's poor soil everywhere. And you can take advantage of that and build an outstanding deer hunt this summer, this fall, and heading forward. And you know the cool thing about it? Every single year, I experience more scrapes, more rubs, more buck sightings. I think in 2003, 4, somewhere around there, I had 5 8-points. That was a huge thing to get 5 different 8-points on camera, and then let alone going into 2006. So there's so much that you can do even with very poor soils. There's a giant rub here, right here in southwest Wisconsin. We just saw it for the first time today. But I had rubs that were similar to this going on my property over that 10-year period. And although the changes sometimes can happen faster in an ag area, you can have some great changes that you can experience every single year and enjoy your property, even in a poor soil property, even in a northern property or big woods. You don't have to be in an agricultural region to have a great parcel. Now, before we end this, I encourage you guys to check out my playlists. I have almost 300 videos in my YouTube, on my YouTube channel. They're all mine. And I have Doesn't matter if there's 14, 15 in mock scrapes, water holes, food plots, hunting thermals, using any type of strategy that you can think of, daytime, daylight movements for non-nocturnal deer hunting, advanced mature buck hunting strategies, trail cam strategies. I cover every segment. I have a lot of playlists on my channel, and they all my videos are put into those channels, so into those playlists. So if you check out playlists on my channel, I get a lot of people asking all the time about mock scrapes. So there's 15 on there for you to bore yourself with some night or during the night if you can't sleep to watch. And that covers a lot of other segments too. I hope you enjoy those playlists. I hope you enjoyed today's video. And again, if you have a poor soil property or located in big woods with not a lot of deer numbers, you can change it. We had wolves, bears, cougars, coyotes, bobcats up there, and you can still create a quality parcel. That's what I found. And hey, that was in a 100-inch snowfall zone too.